Greg Tepper and Greg Powers of Dave Campbell's Texas Football here on National Signing Day 2023, breaking down the news, notes, and overall breakdown of recruiting's biggest day. Powers, let's go down to Waco, to Central Texas way, talk a little bit about what the Baylor Bears were able to put together in 2023 as far as their recruiting class is concerned. And this is going to be a new look Bears team. If you count the signings and the transfer portal, there's 30 new faces, I think maybe more than 30 new faces that are going to be on this Baylor roster. I'm interested in your overall thoughts on what is kind of a roster overhaul for the Bears.
Yeah, things are really changing down in Waco, and you know, I'm just going to I'm going to preface all my comments. For whatever reason, Baylor is one of the programs that I have a hard time encapsulating in very few words, right? Their approach is different. They do a good job with it. They're tremendous evaluators of talent. They aren't afraid to go after a player that some other people might overlook or offer a player first. And by and large, it's tended to work out well for them. You know, this is a program who really hangs their hat on the evaluation, which is kind of like an old school style of thought as you think about it in, like the new recruiting era. And there will be a lot of guys that are coming in either from the transfer portal or from the high school ranks who will have a chance, to make an early impact on that roster as well. So it's just going to be a different kind of look in Waco, and they really concentrate on Texas high school football talent, which is refreshing. They love to recruit Texas high school football players. Texas high school football players in turn reciprocate that interest with the success that they feel like that they can have not only on the field underneath the day veranda, but the type of person that they can develop into that program. But let's make no mistake about it, the type of guys that they are recruiting, they want to make it to the NFL, and that's what drives them to be successful. But there are a few guys on this list who I really like, and we might dive into some of the top rated guys, but give me a chance to segue into Bryson Washington from Franklin for a second. Wow.
Go for it.
Kind of like a Mr. Do-It-All. I really like Bryson Washington there. I think that this is a huge pickup for them. And kind of like an overarching theme of this class is I think that they did a pretty good job of reloading on the defensive front. I really like Trey Wilson from Lakeview, Centennial, and Garland. DK Kalu, the son of a standout NFL player from Fort Bend Ridge Point. I really like his pedigree. I think that he has a chance to be really special there. And LaGrange has a defensive lineman named Jaron Woods who suffered an injury during his senior year, so you didn't hear much about him. But he's a 6'4", 265-pounder who could be like a strong side defensive end, defensive tackle. Maybe could even grow into an offensive lineman down the point. But these are the type of guys that Baylor does a tremendous job as it relates to in the recruiting process with, because they evaluate soundly.
Okay, so obviously, it's a whole staff effort, but you got to feel like David Wetzel and company, the guys on the high school side are certainly doing a lot of work there. So overall 16 signees from the Texas high school football ranks. Who are the guys that Baylor fans should really be excited about heading into Waco?
Well, I'm going to start with the top-rated guy. He's our number one rated offensive tackle, and he's a guy who has tremendous upside as well, and that's Isaiah Robinson from Arlington Lamar, a guy who picked up a ton of offers throughout the recruiting process. And I think as you project long-term potential, he's a guy who could be playing in the NFL one day because he's so athletic, so long. He is like, as you think about it in your mind, like the prototypical left tackle type. He is that dude. It wasn't an extremely deep year for offensive tackle talent. I don't even know how many. I think there's less than 5 rated in the top 100. There's definitely less than 5 rated within the top 100. I think you have Isaiah Robinson, Trevor Gooseby, and maybe one more who's on that list. they got the one that they needed. Looking through the rest of the recruiting list, Brendan Bett, another defensive lineman from the Killeen area, I really like him. We got to talk about Dawson Pendergrass, right? Like I told you, we'd be talking about this because it's hard to differentiate from some of the talent on their list from like top to bottom. All these guys are pretty darn good. And Dawson Pendergrass from Mineola, I don't know what he's going to be. They say running back on his, whenever he signed back in the early signing period, they said running back. So I guess that's where he's going to get his start. He's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun to watch in that offense because he was a Mr. Do-It-All at Mineola, and he can play anywhere on the football field. I think he'd be a great linebacker, but watching him tote the rock in the Baylor offense, he's going to run over some dudes. He's going to run around some dudes, but he's an extremely athletic prospect as well. But we could just keep running down this list. There's not a huge line of demarcation from after you have Isaiah Robinson at the top, from their number 2 rated guy down to their number 21 rated guy that they signed out of high school. They're all pretty good.
One thing I'll say about Dawson Pendergrass is his that Mineola team. I mean, he was such the workhorse for them, and like there's an argument that he's the most valuable player in Texas high school football this year because he was doing everything for that team.
He even kicked and punt. Was he the kicker and punter too? Maybe, I don't know. I think he did. Like, you're right. I mean, he was a whole lot of fun to watch. He was a lot of fun,
and I think Baylor's going to have. I think the Baylor staff's going to have a really fun time moving him around and figuring out where he could best fit. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that probably the biggest recruiting storyline involving Baylor is a guy who isn't going to Baylor, and that would be Austin Novosad, who was an early the Dripping Springs quarterback, an early signing day flip to Oregon as the Ducks closed particularly strong. How did they make up for that? How do they make up for that? That's a big loss for Baylor, who's going to be the real gem of that class. Where does that leave the Bears as far as under center is concerned?
Well, they didn't sign another high school prospect. We kind of touched on this back in the early signing period. It was the biggest loss for any team in Texas, any college team in Texas on the recruiting front, because he was committed for so long and it came so late. But they were able to secure a transfer from Sawyer Robertson from Mississippi State, which I think adds immediate depth. Texas high school football fans will remember him from Lubbock Coronado, where he passed for nearly 4,000 yards during the first 2 years of his prep career, and then almost passed for 4,500 yards during his senior season and had 146 passing touchdowns in his career. This guy can throw the rock. He's extremely intelligent. He scans defenses quickly and makes quick reads. And I think that definitely lessened the blow of not being able to get Novosad. When you lose a 4-star, a guy who was like the center of the recruiting class, you're not going to make up for that with like a transfer portal name necessarily, but these transfer portal guys have experience. They're ready to play. I think Austin Novosad's a definite redshirt guy at Oregon. Well, Sawyer Robertson's going to come right in and compete for the starting quarterback job. So, I mean, I think that is definitely going to help Dave Aranda and Jeff Grimes down in Waco because they've got a guy who can now step right onto the field if they need it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting and very Texas heavy class there at Baylor, and excited to see what they do early on in their career as National Signing Day 2023 is coming to a close. Powers, appreciate your time, my friend.
Thanks for having me.